You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Greetings, everyone. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily, episode 1559. Today's show is all about feeding horses in the winter, including our beloved senior horses. And I'm so happy to welcome to the show today Dr. Kelly Vineyard, Senior Nutritionist for Equine Technical Solutions at Purina Animal Nutrition. Welcome to the show, Dr. Vineyard.
Thanks for having me, Jennifer.
Today's topic, winter challenges and caring for senior horses, specifically as it pertains to feeding them and their nutrition. So as things get colder and drier, because some parts of the country don't get cold, for example, I live in Central Florida, it really doesn't get cold here, but it gets really dry and the grass dies. So how and what we feed our horses does need to change. So what are some of the things that we need to really pay extra close attention to when we're feeding our seniors over the winter months?
I think the biggest thing when you're talking about senior horses and then winter is, first of all, the main way the horses keep warm is through fermentation of fiber, of hay. And so, making sure that these horses throughout these really cold months, and even in Florida, it can get a little bit cold, you want to make sure they have plenty of forage to eat because that's going to ferment and that's going to create internal heat. The challenge for senior horses comes in is what if they can't chew hay, right? And so if horses can't chew hay because of poor dentition, they're older, they've lost their teeth, or they've lost the grinding surface, you're going to have to replace long stem hay with a complete feed with, smaller fiber length, pelleted hay, chopped products, and then a complete feed like Equine Senior is really nice because it kind of brings everything that horse needs into one formula. So it's their essential vitamins and nutrients, it's essential protein to keep, healthy top line in these older horses. Really good quality forage, easily digestible. And the key with feeding these complete feeds to these horses with bad teeth is to break it up in multiple meals per day. Don't feed it in just your typical 2 meals a day. That's not going to cut it when you're feeding 15 pounds a day of pelleted feed. Remember, you're replacing hay too. So I like to break it up into at least 3 or 4 meals a day when possible.
There you go. And I would like to put an item in the Purina Animal Nutrition suggestion box. I think Purina Animal Nutrition needs to develop an automated feeder for horses who eat like this.
Oh, duly noted. Duly noted.
Anyhow, I digress. So you want to feed your horse something so that you make sure he's getting enough digestible fiber, because digestible fiber is a key to keeping him warm. Did I get that right?
Yes, correct. That's right.
So there's a different kind of fiber too. There's non-digestible fiber. Does that play a role in warmth, or is that simply something that helps keep the gut filled and moving?
Yeah, indigestible fiber is important too. That it's more that has overall gut health, and because indigestible is not really being fermented as readily as the digestible fiber, and it's the actual fermentation byproduct is heat. So that's the digestible fiber is really the critical piece when you're talking about heat production.
So what about hydration? Everybody thinks about keeping their horse hydrated in the summer. They work hard, they sweat a lot. We worry about that, but is that an issue in the winter as well?
Oh, I definitely think so, for sure. We all are familiar with the colic risk when the weather changes. And oftentimes that's related to these cold snaps where horses stop drinking. They don't want to drink really cold water, especially if it's like all of a sudden and they're not used to it. And so when a horse gets dehydrated, their colic risk goes up. So we all are familiar with that, right? The other thing that can happen in the winter is, like you mentioned earlier, grass dies. And so, fresh pasture grass is really high in water content, 80% water. And so a lot of horses get much of their water intake from fresh grass, but when that dies, they've got to compensate and drink more out of the bucket and drink more water. And so in the cold weather, sometimes they're not as likely to want to drink. And so being creative and just monitoring your horse's drinking habits. And I like to use Replenimash, which is kind of what I like to call a bran mash alternative in my horse's ration in the winter, especially with cold snaps, to make sure that they get a bunch of water. It's basically a dry product. It's really tasty. It's made with ingredients that are already in our horse feeds. So some of the exact same ingredients that we use to make our concentrate feeds and complete feeds go into Replenimash, but it's in a loose form. It's got a lot of beet pulp that soaks up water. We add electrolytes, which will also help drive drinking behavior. And we also will add Outlast. And you can just make that as wet as your horse will possibly accept it. I like the wetter the better, the more water the better. And that can really encourage water intake.
There we go. I love Replenimash. I have used it. And then what about folks who have trouble with the hay? Either they don't have a place to store it, the horse doesn't eat as much as he should, both for weight maintenance and for the digestible fiber. What can we do there?
Yeah, I mean, finding good quality hay is always on most horse owners' minds all the time. And so there are a couple ways you can stretch your hay supply if you're worried about not having enough to last you through the rest of the winter. There's a product called Impact Hay Stretcher, which I love it because it's exactly what it says it is. It stretches your hay. And a 3-quart scoop of the hay stretcher product that's pelleted basically is equivalent to about a good sized flake of grass hay. And so you can, save some hay and feed hay stretcher instead. You get the same, good fiber. It's balanced, so it does have some nutrients added to it to keep all the nutrition balanced, but it's not as fortified as a true complete feed would be. And that's another option too, is to use a complete feed like Equine Senior that has all the fiber, forage built into the pellet that the horse needs, plus all of the essential nutrients and some extra calories, extra fat. Especially important for senior horses that maybe they don't digest forage as well as they used to, and they certainly may have trouble chewing hay like they used to. So Equine Senior becomes more important for those types of horses to replace long stem hay as well.
So it sounds like, particularly if you have a senior horse, that they need extra help in the wintertime, but maybe not desperately so. Doesn't eat as much long stem forage as you like. You can combine give him his Equine Senior in the levels described by the label. And you say,
Mm-hmm.
he could, if he gained a couple of pounds, that wouldn't hurt. You can still add your hay stretcher because you're not going to imbalance that
That's
food.
right.
You're not going to mess it up. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you did the same thing, you gave him the appropriate amount of Equine Senior, but you wanted to add a little extra digestible fiber to his diet. If you add just plain beet pulp, that is going to affect the vitamin and mineral profile of his total diet, whereas adding the Impact Hay Stretcher is not going to have a detrimental effect on that balance.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, beet pulp is great. We love beet pulp, but all on its own, it has a very high calcium content and a very low phosphorus. It's about a 10-to-1 ratio. And, we're really kind of trying to target 2-to-1 to 5-to-1 in a mature horse. So if you feed a lot of beet pulp, you can get pretty far away from that pretty quickly. And the other challenge with beet pulp in the winter is just soaking it in general. It's difficult to soak. If you're in a very cold environment, it can freeze.
Beet pulp cubes.
That is right. So using, something like Equine Senior or Omeline 400 is another complete feed that has high beet pulp content. They don't require soaking. The way we process it, it's, smaller particle size. We use some external fat, some external oil, external liquids to kind of keep it to where it's softened and it doesn't need to be soaked. And those are really helpful to use in the winter to supplement kind of your base diet as well with extra fiber.
There we go. So keep an eye on that senior horse in the wintertime. Make sure he's drinking enough. You can use your Replenimash to help him not only stay hydrated now, but learn to use that to your benefit and use it as a tool, not just an emergency thing when, oh my gosh, you forgot to drink. So lots of great stuff. And if your head is spinning, your eyes are blurry, again, those links are purinamills.com/equine-senior or purinamills.com/feed-finder. And again, thank you, Dr. Vineyard, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. Horse Radio Network has thousands of engaging podcasts for horse people, and you can have them sent right to your phone. Just subscribe via your favorite podcast player. This is Coach Jen, and I will be back again soon with another tip. Until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.